Hi, everyone. This is Dave Saltmarsh. Welcome to our presentation on the TEAL Plus model. I'm joined today by Dr. Emily Roberts-Froese and two other members of the Community Education Initiatives team, Valeria Chita, and I said actually that Kelly Watkins-Conrad is joining us, but she's always lurking somewhere in the background. The three of us are part of a recently developed department in Jamf focused on helping the community, and mostly we're focused on helping other Jamfs who are out there in the community. We're going to talk specifically about TEAL Plus, and it came about because of all the volunteerism that Jamf does out in the community, and so now we have a bit of a, I won't say a formalized, but something that helps all the different Jamfs that go out there with some consistency of what we do. So I'm going to get into a little bit of why it was developed, talk about how it's different and what it isn't, while Valeria and Dr. M are going to get into some of the more specifics. The acronym itself, it's not Jamf's. While it was developed, TEAL was developed by MIT back in the early 2000s. The concept of having kids at tables and active learning has been around for decades. What we've done at Jamf is we've added all the magic we can do with iPads to create this personalized approach. A book I read a decade or so ago was about mass customization. Some people consider that an oxymoron, but to me, being able to customize the student experience in a large classroom setting is possible. And so we want to show how you can do that with a focus on STEM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and maths. So within that, we set out in 2017 to support a community in Haiti. And I mentioned this really came out of Jamf having volunteer time for all of its employees. We also have a great matching program for donations. And we also have the ability to give grants from our Jamf Nation Global Foundation to organizations. So in 2017, Jamf had an idea to go down to this orphanage within a school in Haiti and bring some technology. Because some people like myself were involved, and a lot of Jamfs come from an education background, we knew right off the bat that we needed to go in with more than just a drop-off program. We had to have something that sustained. A lot of organizations drop technology off, and they don't think about the instructional model. Well, that VTO experience has grown because within weeks, we had another organization ask us, well, can you do what you're doing here in this place in Haiti? So then we had to design a classroom in a shipping container, an active learning model classroom. And that's where we use the TEAL model. Next thing you know, we have 15 locations across 6 different countries. And when you start rolling things out and people ask why and what you're doing, and then people are asking, well, can we have one? You need to define yourself. And so that's where the TEAL Plus model came into being, because we couldn't go places and bring in 4 years of instructional technology. We had to hone our message. So we've honed our message down for organizations that really need a shift, a drastic shift from the way they were doing things. This isn't for incremental change, it's for significant change. The first thing we do is we look at the environment. We want to shift from teacher-centered to student-centered. We also want to bring that instructional, the teaching style, the pedagogy of how to do that. And while there are books on this topic, we really wanted to hone that message to what either non-educators or those that have never experienced it before can do in a short period of time. And I mentioned before, this is no dump and run program. We want something that can grow with the organization. The intent is that the organization uses this as a jump start, but has continual professional development and gradual ownership of bringing their own lessons and what they particularly want to cover. You know, again, we're talking about 6 different countries and all different kinds of curriculum requirements to bring that into the model, into the TEAL Plus model. So it's a gradual over time process. We focus on a couple very specific things. Again, I mentioned this isn't for everyone. This isn't for people who've been using technology. We have great customers out there who set the example during the pandemic. This isn't necessarily for them. But if there was an organization that is still doing a lot of things that were being done in the 90s and hasn't changed their model, if they're experiencing an opportunity gap, like a community we found in St. James, Minnesota, that has 55% of their student population is new to the United States. We want to help with that. And really, it's for those organizations, those places who don't have the ability. And when I say that, some people haven't been able to change, from the colonial models that were brought in by the British, French, or U.S. industrial model of education isn't all that great either, in my opinion, who haven't shifted from that. So we have an ability to come in, train teachers gradually over time to shift their instruction. Now, that has some different needs for different organizations. And the biggest one that we're out there helping, because again, if you're a US or a country that has Apple services, you have access to all of the things we're bringing to countries that don't have it. We have a lot of locations who are focused on the fourth industrial revolution, where they are hoping that they can have their young people stay where they are and stay employed. And as a result, they can give back to their community rather than having to go off and go to school to get resources elsewhere and then stay. The dilemma is they typically say that they don't know how to do that. We know we want good computing ability, we want internet, but what they're usually missing is the transformational use of technology and the instructional side. We also tend to find organizations are trying to jump right to that career development, and what they haven't focused on is that readiness with problem solving, critical thinking, and creativity built in. And so we're trying to put this and show from theory to practice. So the TEAL Plus model is really about taking a lot of theory that a lot of people have contributed towards and putting it into practice. That's not that easy. Usually it's time. Ask any teacher why they aren't doing the approaches they know are important. They know these are important concepts. It's almost always about time. And then there's change. Many organizations have seen so much change for just change's sake and it not seeing the result. And they don't, and it's not a sustainable model. It's also, there's so much out there. How do you meet the needs of a group of kids in a classroom? It's a scary concept. And so sometimes that's why, because they don't have the tools to meet all the needs of the kids. The enablement, TEAL, technology enablement, is as much for teachers as it is for students. And the enablement piece helps that mass customization. Then there's so many resources. I go to ISTE every year. I go to BET every year, and I am just overwhelmed. I have to go back to my hotel room and turn off the lights and try to come down to earth. There's so much out there. So we have a criteria for selecting those things. And Valeria will get into that, but it's how are we to mass customize the experience for students? And how are we able to find resources that actually meet that idea? Now, before I hand this off to Valeria, I sometimes I just have to reflect a little bit for myself. I remember when we stepped into Haiti. I haven't been back to Haiti in a year because of the crises going on. I remember my first trip to Afghanistan and then my second when we actually implemented it, and the passion the people had there. And I'm so glad that both Haiti and Afghanistan are still going strong, even though we can't be there, because of the people there. As much as we have a philosophy and a concept, it's about the people on the ground having that passion for helping the kids. And seeing pictures of our facilitators just reminds me every day that it's worth what we're doing. Now, I'd like to hand this off to Valeria so she can go into some of the specifics on the criteria that we use for selecting tools to help the TEAL Plus model.
Hi, I'm Valeria Chira, and I just want to kind of hone a little bit on what Dave already said. We do have an abundance of resources, especially here. We want to make sure that we pick the ones that align to what we want to do. So these are the 5 things that we look for. We want to have different types of input. We want to have alternative input, and that's why we look for that physical to digital connection. We also want to be able for the hardware or software that we are choosing to be adaptive, not only in difficulty to go at each student's pace, but also in Also in accessibility. We do have locations and we have it in every classroom. I've been in the classroom for many years, and each student has different needs. And we're not talking just about physical needs, we are talking about the way they learn. Another thing that's important to us is that it will move at each learner's pace. We don't want to decide a student on what they've done before. We want them to be able to start at their best. One more thing is the prompts and hints to guide the learner. We want our hardware and software to be able to guide them and continue to go on their own pace. And then that feedback that is so important for each learner. I'm going to show a little bit of some pictures that will show you the hardware that we have or the resources that we have. Here you can see, there it is. So you can see here students practicing with Osmo. You can see that they have tiles that they move and they connect to the iPad. They can see there is something very tangible that they can do and get an instant feedback of what is happening and when it's correct and when it's not. So this is a list of all the things that we have at our hubs and that we think that support that TEAL Plus that we want to have. I'm going to show you some pictures. Here you have a student in St. James, Minnesota, using a Logitech crayon. He has an alternative input connecting to the iPad. There are some students here working with spheroballs. They are doing some art, and as they develop their program, they can see what is going right and what is not. So that get not only the instant feedback, but they have that accessibility to move things at their own pace. Here's another one with bolts. We did a little bit of engineering in here, and we asked them to create something that will let them do some art projects and have to use the bolt with some other things to create a design. Students here get an instant idea of when something is not going the right way. We had Abby, and it's a robot that you can go to their webpage and research all of this a lot more, but it gets the students not only encouragement, but also it adapts to what they are learning in math or in literacy. And it's guiding them to where they need to be, to where they want to go. This is one other example, and I know that this is one of Dave's favorite. We are just doing a camp here in Eau Claire this week, and we can see when students get that instant idea of what is not working. And this is a student coding their drones. We did yesterday the same thing with Spheros, and we are excited to try that today again. They know because of the alternative input what is working, what is not, when to change things. So this is also helpful for the teachers that don't have to be planning and getting to each student, even though they will be thinking about their students. They don't have to work into getting that feedback all the time while it's needed. This is just a list, and like I said, we will have a bunch of resources for you to look at. If you want to look at these specific ones, these are the ones that we have been using. We have no doubt that there are many others that you can find interesting and good for your classroom, but this is what we are using right now, looking at the criteria, that the things that we want to accomplish. So now, thanks for your patience with my pronunciation. I'm going to pass it now to Dr. Froese.
Hi everyone, JNUC 2022. I'm excited to be here. And as I was listening to both Dave and Valeria talk, I just want everybody to take a deep breath and know what you're doing in your classroom and on your campuses is wonderful work. And what we're talking about is really kind of how is TEAL Plus different? We know that you've got different, teaching methodologies, learning ideations, all that sort of stuff going on in your campuses all over the world. And what we really want you to hone in on and take away from this presentation is what is that little differentiator that can really change the trajectory of the learning experience for the learner and the educator in the classroom. That's right. We really want educators to learn just as much as the kids in the classroom, because technology is fun and exciting, and the integration of it is sometimes scary, but it doesn't have to be. So speaking of technology and being scary, I'm going to make sure my clicker works here. And I'm going to go forward, maybe. Dave, can you help me with it's not working. All right. So, the differences in the teaching, or in other words, the differences in the experience. I remember, Dave told a story, so I'm going to tell a story. I remember when I was younger and in that classroom, and I remember we all sat in rows, we all listened to the same lecture, we were all given the same worksheet, and our feedback came in the form of red ink. I'm going to let you sit in the red ink thought for just a minute and remember what that felt like. Sometimes it was great. Sometimes it was a very positive experience. Sometimes not so much. What TEAL Plus offers is an opportunity for kids to get on-demand feedback right when it's happening. I'm not thinking of it the way my educator wants me to think of it. I'm not learning it, retaining it the way my educator's wanting. And I'm getting that instant feedback. And the tools that we talk about here in a second, both with the apps that Valeria talked about and the actual hardware that I'm going to talk about in a second, really allows the educator or facilitator in the room to give that on-demand, personalized, student-centered experience. Yes, this can be happening and probably is happening in a lot of your learning environments right now. But again, we just want to talk about that little differentiator that can just really bring power to the space. So in looking at instructional practices, TEAL Plus looks closely at its components. Starting with transition, the idea is to maximize instructional time with less time in those transitions. I can't tell you how many times I was like, look up here, I need your attention, especially when I was in that second grade classroom, and even with my juniors and seniors when I taught them. That transition time it's really lost instructional time. So if we can help gaining their attention quickly, and with the Jamf teacher, with a stroke of your device, you can get those kids looking back at you quickly, so you can, address misunderstandings, you can give affirmations where affirmations are due. And if kids are already, past the point of where they need to be, move along. Don't waste that precious time on something they already know. Go ahead and move forward. And we know that, promoting student engagement and really having kids involved in their learning really starts building those leadership qualities that we look for modern day graduates. We really want kids to have those self-advocacy skills. We want them to be able to collaborate with each other. We want them to be able to communicate respectfully with adults or, higher ranking people in the classroom. And we really feel like this methodology really fulfills that want or that desire. And I love this picture. You saw it earlier, but I think there's a lot of power in this photo. The students have the materials, the resources they need to explore and get messy in what they're doing. The educator is able to see what they're doing. You can see the student's screen is actually projected on that monitor. So if she's standing there over his shoulder having a conversation, obviously she can see what he's doing. But let's say Dr. Froese walks across the classroom and she's helping Dave out in the other corner. She can still see what this table is doing on that monitor and really, catch any kind of misconceptions or anything that could be happening at that time. So she's not holding the devices. It's a hands-off kind of approach. She's using her words as her tool here in this picture. But these two kiddos really have, the world at their fingertips in as far as devices go for this lesson. And then I talked a little bit about the hardware and the devices and everything you see on this screen with Apple School Manager, Apple Classroom, Jamf Teacher, Apple TV, and Jamf Educator. With the exception of purchasing that Apple TV, everything on this screen is free. Absolutely free with purchase. It's the toy and the Happy Meal. Like, you get these things free. And so we highly encourage you to go explore them. The one you may not be most familiar with is that Jamf Educator, and that's something that's near and dear to my heart, because what Jamf Educator is it's a free professional learning opportunity that all you need is a Jamf ID to log on, again, is free, to log into Jamf Educator and just hop on the train. It's a train metaphor with the experience, and you can go through and really learn how Jamf teacher, student, and parent can really help you with student engagement and classroom management, and gaining that attention, as I mentioned before. It's a very powerful tool, but it's also a self-paced. It's much like maybe an Apple teacher experience you may have had, or prior virtual professional learning that you may have experienced, but it's at your own pace. You can log in anytime and check that out. I will also let you know that we will all be on site during JNUC 2022 if you want to meet up with us, have a conversation about how to get your hands on Jamf Educator, or talk any more about what we've discussed so far. With that, Dave, I think it's you.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Em. And this slide really is for me because of what did I forget to say in the beginning. So now I can refresh that. And the number one thing I forgot to say is I mentioned the Matter Innovation Hub program was the catalyst for creating the TEAL Plus model. There is another Jamf session on an overview and an update on the Matter Innovation Hub program. That is a Jamf Community Education Initiative that we initially started and really handed off to Matter, and now we support them. And that session is available for you to watch. We've also done that session since 2018. So if you're really interested, remember that's where it came from. And I say that because this part of what it isn't, I was part of a strategy after I left my school district at Texas Instruments and then at Jamf. And one of the first things I learned from Chip, and Dean also says this to me, and so does Woody. Sometimes strategy is about knowing what you aren't going to do. And a lot of times when we talk about what we're doing, it's like, well, this is just another model. What isn't it? Well, what it isn't an all-in-one. This isn't the program. It's a starter kit for a lot of organizations that are somewhere on a scale of 1 to 10 at a 1, 2, 3, or 4. However, we've learned over time that it's really about readiness for other programs. As much as Jamf wanted to go to Haiti and create a career opportunity program, we realized it was a rote memorization type of education process, and none of the kids, or fewer of the kids, had the skills to go into a career. So then we had to back up, and then we finally went lower. So we're hoping that this is a Kickstarter to get people in challenge-based learning or project learning. It's a broader implementation of a lot of different instructional models, TPAC, SAMR, LODI. I could go into a half hour to 45 minutes on each of those, but we combine those evaluation models. Anything that's important is done purposely, and it's evaluated. So everything we're doing is with a very specific purpose, and then we do have evaluations to focus on that. One of the things we notice wherever we go, it really isn't about help the kids so much, because within 10 minutes, anywhere in the world I've gone, students are like this young girl teaching and explaining to another student. Any kid anywhere is so excited to show their work, whether it's to bring home and put on the refrigerator, show it in the classroom. And engagement increases quickly. It's mostly about the teacher or the adult practices. Often it's not even the teacher. We're enabling them on how to have other adults in the room support what they're trying to do. So again, it isn't an all-in-one program. We usually go to organizations and say, look, this is 60% baked. This is a Kickstarter. You have to bring your own spin to it, and you have to have your own passion. And while we're mostly focused around the world in countries that don't have Apple services, because Haiti and the only country in the continent of Africa is South Africa that can use Apple School Manager. And you know what? Apple helped us back in 2017 get Matter set up to be one of the only organizations that I know of in the world that isn't a school in a country that happens to have Apple School Manager to provide it. So when people say, why aren't you there? Why aren't you doing this? A lot of it is where our volunteers were wanting to go. And secondly is these places that we mostly go can't do this. They don't have the ability. Like we bring in 25 iPads and we service 400-500 kids with those. using the shared accounts. We can go places that don't have hardly any internet. And although we need internet for the student accounts, most everything the students do is downloaded on the iPads. So internet, while needed, isn't constantly used. The throughput's nowhere near as high as if you're using online services that go down all the time in the places we go. So some of the things we're doing are because of what you can't do otherwise in those locations. Our US-based sites that if you watch the Matter Innovation Hub site are in organizations that have a gap. They're either in a community that doesn't have a lot of services for the kids, a lot of after-school programs, or perhaps we're helping a school department. And most everybody watching this video is in a US or international school that has all those Apple services. And it doesn't mean that we can't help. And so we've provided the TEAL Plus model as a document in the resources. And really, it's the lessons I've learned by traveling around the world, visiting amazing schools, and then bringing that story back to other organizations. Say, hey, this group is doing it here. Let's try this. Hey, this group over here is doing this. And that's my last message. We're not doing this because we're at Jamf. In fact, I came to Jamf because being in the classroom using iPads with teachers, we had some needs. Jamf solved those. We can help and I use this word hesitantly, reluctant adopter of technology. This isn't for the Emilys, the Valarias. This is for that 60% of a staff somewhere who still in 2022 hasn't crossed the chasm to using technology to personalize the experience, provide students opportunity to move at their own pace, provide students who have different abilities and skills to find their passion. We have so many kids enter the hub that I hear the teacher as they're walking in, why do you have to touch things? How come you have to touch things all the time? And they walk in and we say, hey, you can touch this stuff. And so many of the kids that struggle in regular classrooms thrive in here. And we love to see that. So if you're an organization that maybe is challenged with that a little bit, we'd love to share more of this story with you. If you're interested and you're an organization wanting to help an organization, please know if you watch the Matter Innovation Hub piece, Jamf is a partner. We provide pro bono services, pro bono implementation of what Matter is implementing. And usually there's a donor and a funder come with that. And that's usually if somebody's watching this video and they're, hey, I heard about what you're doing. However, if you want to know about the TEAL Plus program and you want some of our help, the Community Education Initiative team can try to help you with that if you're interested and you have more questions. Please look at the resource page because we have links to videos of the activities we couldn't do on this video. This is supposed to be a hands-on session. None of the three of us may sound like I do, like to stand up here and talk for a half hour. If you wind me up, I can, but I really prefer you have a lived experience and then you come to that realization of, wait, you're using the camera as an input device and it's picking up these physical things? Wait, you're using the kid's speech to text? These are some things that we can only show in person. So please look at the resource page and take a look at some of the videos of the stuff in action. I hope you have a wonderful JNUC. Thank you so much for watching our presentation. Have a terrific rest of your day.